Member for Vancouver Hastings.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And Honourable Speaker, I move the following motion. Be it resolved that this House discuss and debate that the BC government should immediately develop a comprehensive poverty reduction strategy. Honourable Speaker, this is a critical issue for British Columbians. As we move forward and we talk about the challenges of the economy, and we talk about the challenges and how British Columbians are impacted by that, one of the things we know is that the impacts faced by those who live in poverty is one of the most critical issues that we need to address. In this province, at the last estimates, there are about 500,000 British Columbians today who live in poverty based on the federal standard, the low-income cutoff. Of those, about 140,000 are children. These numbers, I would point out also, Honourable Speaker, these are 2007 numbers, the last year that these statistics were available for. And I'm sure, as every member would understand, 2007 was a pretty prosperous year in British Columbia in terms of our economy, and times have got more difficult. We have seen the welfare rolls increase with employables, and we can reasonably expect that those numbers, the 500,000, the 140,000 children, those numbers have increased. Those numbers are significantly greater than they were before. The other interesting thing about this, Honourable Speaker, and it's one of the real challenges, is that these aren't all people who are on income assistance. What we know is more than half of the people who live in poverty in this province today have a full-time income coming into the house, into their homes. But because of the levels of minimum wage, because of the levels of those incomes, people continue to live in poverty. The BC Liberals, Honourable Speaker, have refused to raise the minimum wage since 2001, and that has resulted in the situation that we face today, with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of British Columbians living in poverty. The cost of poverty, Honourable Speaker, is substantial. While very few provinces, and certainly British Columbia, have not looked at or done any analysis or assessment of the cost of poverty on our society here in British Columbia, that work has been done in Ontario. And in November of 2008, the Ontario Association of Food Banks, supported by a group of eminent thinkers, including people like Judith Maxwell, released a report that looked at the cost of poverty in their province. And they determined that somewhere between $32 and $38 billion a year, or 6% of the GDP of Ontario, is the cost that they face on an annual basis. Honourable Speaker, they've estimated that to be $2,300 per household is what every household pays for the poverty in that province. Those costs are covered by additional health care costs, by legal costs, and by social assistance. In British Columbia, we have a very different situation. We have a situation where nobody is responding to that. Unlike in Ontario now, where the Government of Ontario has moved forward with a poverty reduction strategy, unlike in 6 provinces across this province where people have moved forward with poverty reduction strategies. The other thing we know when we look at British Columbia and the situation here is the National Council on Welfare, a federal nonprofit organization that advises the federal government on issues related to welfare, has looked at this question of poverty across the province. When they looked across the province, Honourable Speaker, they determined that 8 provinces in this country, 8 provinces have succeeded in reducing their poverty rates. It says 8 provinces reached record low poverty rates in 2007. Only Ontario and British Columbia did not. Ontario and British Columbia did not. This report also shows that no matter what standard you use, British Columbia has the highest poverty rates and has continually had the highest poverty rates in Canada based on the work of the National Council on Welfare. And they look at that, whether it be the low-income cutoff or using the market basket measure. No matter which measurement you use, British Columbia has the highest levels of poverty in this country. And part of the reason for that is this government's inability and unwillingness to address this and see this as a significant issue. The Minister of Housing and Social Development has refused to acknowledge, doesn't accept the connection between poverty and costs in health care. This is absurd, Honourable Speaker. It's absurd. We know those costs that go up. We know that when we look across this country with the assessments that have been done, the difference between visits to hospitals as a percentage between people who are in high income levels is about 13% visits to hospitals, about 18% for people in low income levels. There's a significant difference, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, it's time for us in this province to move forward, to put a poverty reduction strategy in place, to join the 6 other provinces in this country that are moving ahead with poverty reduction strategies, provinces from across the political spectrum. It's time that we had a comprehensive plan that deals with housing, with childcare, with training, and with income levels. It's time we had a plan that set targets and timelines for this province to bring the rates of poverty in this province down from the embarrassing levels that we have as having more people in poverty per capita in this province than anywhere in Canada. It's embarrassing. It's shocking. We need to bring those levels down. It's time for targets and timelines to do that. We need to do it in a transparent way so every British Columbian can see the efforts that are being made, and it needs to be a legislated response with the force and power of this legislature getting behind it, putting that in place. Honourable Speaker, the Minister of Housing and Social Development rejected a poverty reduction strategy in the last estimates. It's time for this legislature to tell that minister, to tell the Cabinet, to tell the Premier that we as legislators believe that something different should be done, and to provide that advice and direction to the government that it's time for a poverty reduction strategy in British Columbia, one that's effective, one that's comprehensive, and one that will actually make us the best place on earth when it takes away and creates opportunity for that 500,000 British Columbians who live in poverty today. When we do that, we can then actually be proud about where this province stands. Thank you very much.